All right, we are live for the Wednesday edition of the Morning Check-In. And as always, excited to be back. Looking forward to connecting and just sharing with you some of the latest and greatest that was happening this Wednesday morning. And before I dive any further, let me know if everything is coming through clearly on your end, as well as if we have any first-time viewers, let me know where you're watching from. Would love to acknowledge your presence and welcome you to the community as well. So I'll give it a second and then I'll get into some of the interesting headlines this morning. Of course, it has to do with as I call it, the higher for longer, which is the new norm. And of course, you won't really hear that narrative from the mainstream media because they always want to give you some type of hope and some type of optimistic viewpoint on how the Fed has everything under control and we're headed in for a smooth landing of some capacity. But at this point, everybody knows, particularly you guys, people who pay attention and are awake and aware of what's really happening, know how bad things really are in the main economy. So we're going to touch on that and a couple other things. But I was actually preparing things on the back end here, and what came to mind. And of course, it's I make light of a lot of things just because I have to kind of keep things somewhat uh, light so that you don't lose your mind, just focusing on what's really happening in the real world. And so never do I really mean to take everything as a joke, but then again, you got to have fun with what you do, especially on the back end when you're giving real news to people with a twist. And so today, as I was just getting ready to present everything to you guys, something came to mind from the gladiator scene. And so I thought I would start off by just playing a little bit of it here because I just thought it was interesting to say the least. So check this out real quick.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Anyway, thought I would share that. That was just that little clip there. Something that always are you not entertained? And this is what you're here for. Anyway, hope everyone's doing well this morning. Let's get into it, man. Let me check in real quick, acknowledge a couple people. Then we'll get into some good news, carry into Wall Street and everything in between, all the way down to Main Street. So we got Tom checking in, we got James, we got Crypto King checking in. What else we got here? We got Christopher checking in as well. I appreciate you, man. We got James checking in as well from Rockford, Illinois. Appreciate you, man. Hope everyone is off. Everyone's day is off to a good start, man. And so let me see here. Yeah. Before I get into everything, I preface everything with saying that not once or at all do I actually believe any of the things that come out of mainstream media, even the figures that are given to us. They're always slanted with a twist, just because we know the mainstream narrative is to keep things relatively stable for as long as they foresee it needing to remain that way. And then things will break and fall apart at the seams, which is happening right now. So even the CPI figures we're given, they're lowball figures, but then again, the figures are problematic for their own agenda to try to paint the narrative that everything is fine and hunky dory. So it's unfortunate that apparently the figures that came out today were leaked well before now from the BLS, and so a lot of all the major monetary and financial institutions got wind of it first, which is to be expected because once you know that the game is rigged against you and we weren't invited to play in this party, we're actually the the recipients as well as the just the pawns in this monetary Ponzi scheme that is at play now. So not once do I take any of these figures for being what they are painted as, but it's to be expected. Let me see here. Carlos says, Mike, you got small video format. Yes, we need to take a break from bread and circus. 100%, man. 100%. All right, so let me stop wasting time. Let me get into some good news, man. Let's get this day started right on a good foot. And I'd like to start off with the good news from the Word of God, because beyond the obvious, there's a lot that we can be thankful for. Let me close my screen here. Stop sharing my screen. Okay, bet. Let's get into it. All right, this is April 10th, and it's called Guaranteed. And I'll thumb through it real quick, give you guys something to chew on, and let you, let it bless your soul a little bit. All right, let me close the windows, minimize some things on my end here. And as always, feel free to let me know any thoughts, ideas, suggestions you guys are keeping an eye on in the chat. And then when we go to Q&A, we'll jump right into it. All right, let me close some windows. All right, we're good to go here. So this is from Psalms 37:4. And so it says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Then it says here, a promise is only as good as the character of the one making it. So when it comes to your loving Heavenly Father, there should be absolutely no question about whether or not he will do as he says. You can count on the fact he will, according to Joshua 21:45. But it says, but God calls you to delight in him because nothing will satisfy your soul like being close to him in an intimate fellowship. Let me repeat that. But God calls you to delight in him because nothing will satisfy your soul like being close to him in intimate fellowship. As you draw near to him, he not only provides the wisdom you need at every turn, but he also directs you in how to accomplish his plan for your life, including receiving the promise you yearn for. Be assured the Father will not fail you. The desire of your heart may take a different form than you expected. It may appear in a way you never imagined, but God will keep his word, and the Lord himself will be your joy. So take heart, seek him faithfully, and remind yourself often, quote, not one word has failed of all his good promise. That's from 1 Kings 8:56. And the closing prayer is, Lord, I delight in you. Help me remain focused on you as my joy and my life, trusting fully that you'll keep your promises. Amen. All right, there you have it. Sweet and simple from the good book there. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Hopefully that is something that resonates with you guys this morning, as well as bless your spirits this morning, get you off on the right foot. All right, so let's get into some primary news subject. But before I do that, let me always remind you guys of opportunities. You never know who might be new to the community. And today will be a doozy for sure. Let me get into it. All right. So for those who might be new to the community, don't know, but I always got to put it out there for my people. If you have not, I want to encourage you to take a quick 2-minute survey. All it is 10 questions to test your dollar IQ. If you go to rethinkingthedollar.com/quiz, you get a chance to participate in what I call this information gap filler, where it just basically exposes where you're at currently in reference to the monetary structure, monetary history of our current financial system, and see where you stand. And so as of right now, the averages is about 60%. And so a lot of things here are relatively simple in nature. But then again, if you were not taught these things in school, then you wouldn't know. So fill in that knowledge gap by getting a hold of these questions here. And then beneath this video here, I have my 3 steps to monetary savviness, where once you test yourself, then you can study on some things and then plug in with the community, and you'll be up to snuff on what's happening. So if you're interested, take this quiz and you'll be on your way to having a much higher IQ than the average Joe. And at this current moment in time, it will definitely come in handy. All right, next here. For those who are interested in taking another step in protecting and preserving what is rightfully yours, which is your energy, time, and effort, denominated in a currency, getting back into real physical gold and silver. Here we have colonialsmetalsgroup.com/RTD, where you can actually speak to the experts directly on the phone and get all the information you need on how to take back what is yours out of the legacy system and put it into your possessions in a self-funded direct IRA. And so if you're interested, feel free to click the link in the description, fill out this quick survey. Somebody will give you a call and just ask questions. Find out all you need to know in order to participate in something like this. And if you go down here, you can get more information, find out more about Colonials Metals Group. And also for those who are interested, they have a opportunity for you to get some free silver as well added to your portfolio. So feel free to reach out to them. Give them a call, 888-521-2448, and get all your answers to your questions in real time from the people who know what they're doing. So just something worthwhile. Check it out if you're interested. All right, so let's get into the hot topics of the day, man. So looks like as of right now, I'm just going to jump right into some of the leading stories. If you don't mind, let me just get myself situated right here. So as we're getting the day started, let me just jump in here. We'll look at some figures real quick. and then we'll keep it moving. All right, so as right here, we got precious metals on the screen. Looks like there is a sell-off in a variety of things here, but never. Don't be discouraged. We know how everything will end when all the smoke clears and everybody find out what's really going on here. But here, as of now, we got gold. Gold is down $12. Looks like. Let me refresh this. Make sure this is some fresh figures here. So gold is 2340. So already, gold is already exposed the true nature of our monetary system. And just if you look at where it's going and where it's coming from, we all know that something's taking place in the back order of things. And so I don't really get discouraged or anything like that when I look at the price of metals dropping, just because I know what's real, what's not. And as of right now, silver, $27.98, and as of right now, it looks like it's $28, and so it is responding favorably at this current moment. And so once we break that 30 mark, all bets are off, man. All right, what else we got? Platinum is $969. We got palladium $1044. All right, let's check the bubble space, crypto bubbles, and see what's happening in crypto space. Bitcoin right now is down, or it's up $68,312. It was earlier down 67,000. Those numbers are just astronomical to me. 3,400 right now for Ethereum. And so the reason I follow these two, just because these are the two leading digital assets that the world is being directed towards. So for a speculator's sake, for those who participate, it could be a good opportunity for you. All right, let's look at the complete sell-off right now. Apart from NVIDIA, it looks like NVIDIA is bouncing back, but look at all this red on the screen here. Not too favorable due to these so-called CPI figures being given to us, but it looks like NVIDIA is getting a little bit upward. So to be expected. All right, so let's get into the primary stories here. So here we have fresh off the CNN. I grabbed this a moment ago. This was as of about 20 minutes ago. It says Dow drops by more than 500 points after surprisingly. I'm not quite sure. So me as a skeptic, me who always look into the mainstream narrative and can think the complete opposite anyway from what we've been told, I'm not quite sure what was so surprising. Like, apart from the expectations that they give us, who really believes that in the first place, if you're, from the alternative media perspective. But, just when you see reports like this, surprisingly bad inflation. Okay, I never once for a minute thought that they were actually going to ever be able to achieve or to go back to that 2% mandate of theirs in the first place. Like, the cat's out the bag. Once the pandemic hit and they unleashed the monetary spigot and it flooded the world with currency, there's no way they can reel that back in, because deflationary pressures will cause things to collapse. So they have no choice but to continue to inflate away and then make it appear as if it's something that is problematic in and of itself. But it's all a part of their plan, if you know what's really happening with the financial repression concept. Okay, so what else we got going on here? Outside of the markets not doing too well overall, looks like the 10-year Treasury yield jumps back above 4.5% after March inflation tops estimates. There you go again, tops estimates. And so once again, borrowing costs becoming very problematic, heading into this environment where the new norm will be higher for longer, just because of the current monetary fiscal collision course that we're on right now. And so once again, as the yields are climbing, that signals that on the other end of that trade, other people are deciding to dump, for liquidity's sake, as well as for just the fact that they know this is not going to end well. So they don't want to be left holding the bag either. And so we will see how this plays out. But as of right now, just looking at we got the 1 month here, 5.37. Yeah, the yield curve side of things still inverted, signaling something that's on the pike as well. So just keep an eye on those debt instruments here, because that's how, for the most part, you gauge the true health of the monetary structure. All right, let's get into some primary subjects here. Okay, so here we have inflation rises more than expected. There's another word, to 3.5% in March, derails June rate cut hopes. So as of right now, forecast was first cut in June. But as of right now, not looking too likely, if the fact that inflation, according to the way it's been given to us, is running a little bit hot, or as they like to say, sticky, meaning that basically it's going to be here for quite some time. But it says inflation in the United States surged again in March, surpassing economists' expectations economist expectations, and disappointed investors who are anticipating imminent cuts in the Federal Reserve interest rates. It says annual inflation rate calculated on consumer price indexes rose 3.5%. So what people tend to forget or not really take into consideration is that, consumer price index is made up of a basket of goods and services that, for the most part, gauge the true cost of what it means to live in today's economy. And the items in that basket, even though they've adjusted the basket for significantly over the last 40 years now, no matter what, life will automatically become more expensive because it's baked into the cake as far as how the monetary structure operates. So it just amazes me how, we got these economists, and of course they're Keynesian economists that have that mindset that, government induced expenditures is good for the economy. But once again, overall cost of living for you and I will continue to go up until something gives. So just the fact that they come out with these bogus figures leading people is really deceptive in nature. But here's some of the key figures here. It says annual CPI rate surged from 3.2% in February to 3.5% in March 2024, marking the second consecutive month of increase and exceeding expectations of a 3.4% surge. On a monthly basis, the CPI advanced at a pace of 0.4%, maintaining the momentum from the previous month and surpassing forecasts of 0.3%. So once again, they give us these little small figures, 0.4%, 0.3%. It's just, the index for gasoline spiked by 1.7% on a monthly basis, excluding food and energy. Like, how can you truly get a good estimate of the cost of living if you exclude food and energy? Okay, we'll do that. It says the core CPI inflation rates came in at 3.7% year over year, slightly easing from 3.8% from last year. On a monthly basis, CPI advanced at a pace of 0.4, matching the 0.4 seen from February. So here's just more figures here. Basically, everything according to their expectations is greater than expectations. So here we have market disruption. Okay. So U.S. inflation hotter than expected for 4 straight months. Okay, so it shouldn't be surprising there. As I mentioned before, the current level of hikes, the Fed funds rate, interest rates at 5.2, 10, whatever it is now, was never truly high enough to really nip the inflation narrative in the bud. It was always about trying to maintain a narrative of fighting inflation. But then again, we know that's a facade because you can't fight something that is a monetary phenomenon in reference to the expansion of the monetary base in such a short period of time. So it was inevitable to get to the point where they start to lose the ability to, maintain their own narratives. And so the new norm, as I mentioned before, will be higher for longer because even the 2% mandate that they gave themselves 50, 60 years ago, it was a way of slowly but surely eroding the purchasing power away from our currency, i.e. funding government expenditures, deficits, as well as all the complexes that have been created in this world we live in here. So now we're reached the point of where we're at a day of reckoning, to where now moving forward, even though market analysts and economists talk about a pivot from the quantitative tightening phase we're in now. As I mentioned in the last stream we did on Monday, like there's not enough real pain in the economy. There's not enough, of locking up in certain industries to really warrant the need to begin easing again. So the likelihood of us getting a pivot this year is probably not likely. But then you got to factor in how much pain will they be willing to tolerate heading into a presidential election, because that's not the typical format or cycle they would want, because it makes this current administration look very bad. So are they deliberately trying to sabotage this administration, or is it basically just all hands on deck? They will do whatever it takes to keep the illusion of stability going until they can't do it no more. And so for those who are awake and aware, such as you guys here, you know that this is all one big monetary illusion, like the idea that they're trying to maintain a certain narrative for as long as they can is the name of the game and their deceptive practices. So keep an eye on what's happening beyond our borders here. And that has a lot to do, and it's showing up right now in the prices of gold and silver in USD terms. So that's, to me, more of a important indicator to see the real health of the monetary system. Just look at what's happening with gold. that tells us everything. And so if you're in this legacy system, thinking that U.S. Treasuries is going to be a safe haven down the line, the currency and all the derivatives spun off on top of that are going to be safe. Yeah, I think we all got another thing coming. So, all right. So, but let's get into what is really needed. And this comes from Mr. Jamie Dimon himself. Let me get this on the screen here. So this came out the day before. And it says Jamie Dimon, head of the U.S. largest bank, warns of 8% interest rates along with the recession. So here we got the banker of bankers, and when he speaks, he's on this, he's on this like humanitarian philanthropist, like want to be the good guy in this narrative with his recent activity over the last 2 years of him being more outspoken against the people that have helped make him and his institution quite profitable. And so now he's, I guess, telling more of the truth or just giving us a heads up as to what's really happening. And so higher for longer is the new norm, as I mentioned before. And so here we have the banker of bankers calling for interest rates of 8% or higher. It's basically saying where things will have to go. And so it says here, a chilly scenario for the U.S. economy in which interest rates climb as high as 8% as the effects of unprecedented monetary policy taken to combat inflation takes hold. So he's just basically made it seem more eloquent what I just said a moment ago in reference to what would be needed if there was a real desire to nip the CPI inflation bug nip it and kill it for good. But they can't do 8% because the world couldn't sustain that. Our economy couldn't sustain that. Nevertheless, our government debt. But it says here the odds of a Goldilocks soft landing outcome for the economy are a lot lower than the consensus of a 70 to 80% likelihood. So that smooth sailing, bringing things down, without a recession, still keeping a relative, decent job sector and everything in between, with the stock market not cratering, it's not too likely. It says here, a couple of Dimon's concerns about the potential for stagflation, a recession characterized by lingering high inflation. He warned interest rates could soar to about 8% or even more, a far cry from the already 22-year high rates of over 5%, and going against conventional wisdom of a looming decline in U.S. interest rates. So literally, if the Federal Reserve really wanted to maintain this narrative, let's see if they're bold enough to further trap themselves by the next meeting or two or so decided to hike rates even more. So there's a greater chance of them hiking rates than there are them cutting rates at this current moment. And whether they hike or cut, the economy in of itself will still feel the pain. So just some more information here from Jamie Dimon deciding to be more truthful as to what we could expect if they meaning the bankers really wanted to try to help out the average Joe, which of course we know they don't. So, but then amongst all this stuff happening within our borders here, we all know that behind the scenes on the monetary front, there's a alternative world order, or as it's been stated from China and Russia, that there's a multipolar world order forming, not that unilateral world order that's been West-centered. And this plays into my next topic here. And so despite what we're being told here, this was an article that came out yesterday that pretty much for the most part flew under the radar, but it just goes to show that despite the narratives we're being fed here in the West, it looks like China and Russia are continuing their collaboration in restructuring the monetary order. So not, their economies, are nothing really to brag about. But one thing that separates their economy from our economy is the fact that they have been racing to accumulate gold at a very alarming rate, obviously as an insurance policy against their own monetary malfeasance, as well as the rest of the world issues that are brewing right now. So that's one of the key distinctions between how the monetary systems operate right now. You got the gold-centered one that's being brought back into the forefront, and then you have the debt-based system right now that's being challenged severely. We're witnessing that right now with what's happening with our CPI figures and the need for higher rates for longer. So real quick here, because this is a much more broader viewpoint of what's really happening outside of what we're being fed. But it says here, China and Russia make united stand to reform the West. led global system. It says Xi Jinping tells Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov that Beijing is prepared to step up coordination with Moscow through the BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Lavrov hits out at the West over illegal sanctions and military and political unions against Russia and China. So it goes on here to give more insights as to like how they're further shaking hands, signing deals, strengthening their ties. I'm not going to bore you with the long stories here, but through the formation of the BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they have already brought into existence buku currency swap deals, as well as what will may be announced later this year. We'll see. At the same time, we got the presidential election here. Looks like Russia will be possibly announcing the introduction of some type of development in their alternative payment structure or their BRICS currency or something like that. So the rest of the world is moving forward with the plans that they have put in place, while the West scrambles to try to maintain the narrative that everything is hunky-dory and everything is, sustainable based upon where we're at this current moment. So this is some other news worth paying attention to as well, my good people. All right, so let me get into some things here. I bookmarked a couple things here, and for those who are plugging in right now, as I mentioned before, if you don't mind, hit that thumbs up button, show your support for the channel. Just trying to give you an alternative perspective to what's really happening in the world outside of the mainstream lies that we're being fed on a day-to-day basis. All right, man. So let me get into some other things here. So I was just scrolling through the Twitter sphere, or X, and grabbed a hold of a lot of interesting, or a bookmark, a lot of things that caught my attention. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to just thumb through some things here and share with you bit by bit things I bookmarked this morning. This just gives a different perspective from some of the people that I follow. So here we have Tavi Costa, and one of his concerns as well has to do with the current interest payments of the U.S. debt, which is another reason why the higher for longer concept of, the need for higher interest rates rather is a problem for our government, to where, it's unsustainable. Something will give before we get to this point. And so here's just some of Kavi's thoughts. It says here, forget about inflation, the labor market, or maybe even politics. The chart below is likely the primary reason prompting the Fed to consider cutting interest rates. So outside of the idea that inflation is still a problem, it's still sticky for them, he's on the mindset that due to government borrowing costs, they may have to cut anyway. So once again, because this is all one big monetary experiment, I couldn't tell you what or how this may play out, but I know at the end of the day, the last thing that you're going to want to be solely dependent upon is the very same instrument that they're using to prop this game up. So it says here, assuming current rate remains steady, the cost of servicing the federal debt alone will approach 6% of GDP by the year end. On the other hand, if the Fed reduces rates by 150 basis points, the interest payment would decrease by 33%. It says severe debt imbalances would inevitably lead to central banks to resort to financial repression, compelling policymakers to let inflation rates remain higher for longer. Get it? Higher for longer. The new norm is higher for longer. And so the government has a choice here. They can either, they can either continue the expenditure pathway that they're on, which they cannot cut because it's baked into the cake, or the Federal Reserve can literally come in and save their back by literally keeping and going away from the higher for longer and literally cutting into an environment where they're still experiencing higher than normal CPI figures. So yeah, just the monetary mess that they have created. I'd imagine it takes a lot of maneuvering on the back end for them to keep this thing going without something outright breaking. And so he says here, I cannot stress enough how favorable this environment is likely to be for hard assets. So whether the Fed cuts, whether they don't cut, hard assets, and of course, I'm sure he's referring to gold and silver, will be the benefactor of all this madness, just because it is something that the rest of the world is running towards, and it is a true staple of monetary stability in a world of chaos. So this is from Tavi Costa here. Thought it was worthwhile. So here's another interesting story from Gold Silver HQ. And he's using the silver and the U.S. money supply as the comparisons here. But he says basically all currency units that have been created in the past decades went into the everything bubble: stocks, bonds, real estate, and derivatives. He says, what if it pops and it all flows into gold and silver? Then he says here, back to 1980 ratio or higher. So here on the screen behind me, if I move out the way here, you have in today's dollars, using the current M2 supply, if you were to go back during 1980 when silver popped, it would be the equivalent of $1,000 an ounce as of current M2 supply that's right now. So $1,000 an ounce if something broke and we went back and all currency went looking for safety and it tried to flee into silver. He was saying here right now at silver price currently at this moment, it's with the current M2 minus the manipulations and whatever, it's about $42. And so we know that figure is well lower than what it would be. But if all the currency was to flee back into silver, expect this chart is what he's saying, it's to shoot up to 1980 levels, if not higher. So basically just showing how underpriced, undervalued silver is. And you factor in, let me share another graph with you here. Let me find, it was another graph here. Let me find that graph. Give me a second here. Do I still have it? Nope, I don't have it. But it was from HQ as well. And he was talking about, let me get off here real quick. Give me a second. It was a very interesting graph. Let me see if I can grab it. Where is it at? Do I have it? I don't have it any longer. But it was highlighting how gold and silver, the current supply of what's available in vaults that has been counted as inventory in the Crimex, is running extremely low. And silver is lower than normal. Let me see if I can find it. I can't find it. It is a very interesting graph. Where did it go? Give me 1 second here. I'll try to find it because it just goes to show you how problematic it is to keep the price of silver suppressed beyond what they've been able to do because the vaults are emptying out. Here we go. I found it. Give me 1 second here. I love looking at graphs and visual aids because it gives a good picture as to what's going on. But here from Gold Silver HQ, this was from yesterday, but it says here, dwindling silver. Here's the chart gain. Here's that chart again, including the timeline for gold. So literally, if you look at the available above ground gold and silver that's in the vaults that is being used as the price, which is the physical used to back the paper that gives us our spot price here in the Western Hemisphere. So as you can see here, here's a chart from gold. Gold has been dwindling down slowly but surely since last year, meaning that, gold's been leaving the vault. But if you look at silver right here. Let me get myself out the way. Here you got silver. Something about silver. The silver inventory is being depleted massively at a very alarming rate. So what he's saying is basically something's going to give. And so this is that chart here. It says silver stocks are plummeting. It says LBMA's silver stock hits a 6-year low, signaling a tightening market. So literally, once as the amount of physical in the vaults gets depleted, meaning that people are choosing to opt out of paper game and get into the physical side, they're redeeming some of those contracts, there's going to be a problem because once again, you need some form of physical, ideally, to create the paper contracts that they are able to create an unlimited amount of, to then be able to slam down on the markets, i.e. selling, to drop the prices. And so no contracts, no vaults, no silver in the vaults makes it very difficult for them to continue the monetary manipulation game that they've been doing. So what does that mean? Prices of gold and silver will definitely respond favorably in the days ahead as all the other monetary crap continues on. So, all right, couple more things here. Let me just share with you some things here. So here's another interesting visual aid as well. More about that sticky inflation that we keep hearing about. So here we got inflation remains sticky. So this is the visual graph here depicting what I was talking about earlier. And so having experienced what was considered 40-year highs when we touched 9% back in July of 2022, and of course the tightening phase that has brought their so-called CPI figures down. And so now, as it has bottomed out last fall-ish, it's on the uptick now. And it's on the uptick during a tightening phase of the monetary supply. So not only has the Fed, let a couple things roll off their balance sheet, they cut off the spigot, the monetary spigot. Banks are not lending as plentifully as they used to, and all the things that used to signify more currency being created and brought into existence through debt. And so because that's been dialed back some, the major problem is the fact that, the CPI figures are now turning up, and it's turning up in an environment where things are tight. So imagine if it remains this way and then they decide to cut into this. Like, it's going to shoot off like a rocket. Like, 9%, what we saw back then was a response to a contractionary environment with the pandemic lockdown stuff. But imagine if they reverse course in the midst of what's already problematic and try to ease more. CPI figure is going to really take off. So I can see how Jamie Dimon is warning that, no matter what, we're in for a hell of a ride in the days ahead, just because, this monetary experiment, man, is confusing as ever. But then again, it's so simple. Central banking policy in and of itself is designed to drain real world wealth at the expense of the people using debt, which is the currency. So just looking at that process there lets us know that there's no financial future in Federal Reserve liabilities. So there you have it. Like the race to something real, i.e. hard assets, is the only viable, true, proven, and tested way of minimizing. You won't prevent, but you can minimize the risk in having your entire financial future stolen from you in real time. And then, of course, you factor in the speculative side of things, which could be some digital assets and things of that nature. So, yeah, this is just what's happening, man. And it's still in the beginning phases. We haven't really seen an environment where CPI literally runs rampant to the point where you start hearing about figures such as what's happening in the third world countries, where you see a weekly or daily or monthly spike in the CPI figures that those countries experience, to a point where literally it's a race out of currencies, to where the price of goods and services on the shelves change at a much rapid pace. Like that's the potential area where we're heading in this country here, where we're watching sticker prices on items that we use and buy every day, 20 cents here, 15% here. So all in all, since the pandemic, it's been equated to, trueflation, which is the gauge that does a much broader, more detailed study of the price of the actual percentage of inflation. We're already at about 25% since 2020. That means that's 25% less purchasing power of an actual dollar on top of what we already don't have. So literally, as this progresses from later into, next year, the middle of this decade here, we're going to witness the sticker prices of goods and services on the shelves begin to reflect something that would resemble second, third world type activity, which, we can never imagine. I can never imagine that in this country here. But those are all signs to me that, the monetary order is, restructuring. And it has a lot to do with the lack of confidence that the world is showing in reference to how monetary policy in this country is ran. And it's failing fast. So anyway, what else we got here? Let me see. Last thing here, just something from Mr. Peter Schiff, who has been wrong a lot, but at some point will be proven right because it's baked into the cake. But he says the hotter than expected rise in March CPI proves that interest rates are still too low. More rate hikes are required to move the rate back down to 2%. But not only will the Fed not deliver the required rate hikes, it's planning to reduce rates, fueling the inflation fire. So literally, the Fed, if we want to give them or put them in a position as being the monetary overlords of our system, because of the damage that has been done. And what we're experiencing now is not a 4-year post-pandemic consequences of their actions. This is a 113 or was this 111-year experiment that started in 1913. And so for my people, let me give you another visual aid that I love doing. Let me give you something here. Let me get my stuff here. Let me get my bookmarks here. Give me 1 second here. Let me grab my infamous presidential purchasing power visual aid here. Where'd it go? Give me 1 second here. It's not even where I want it to be. But what we're experiencing now is the end of a long drawn out monetary experiment that unfortunately, mathematically, always ends bad because the weapon of choice has been the currency. And so here we got the purchasing power of the consumer dollar. So, what we're experiencing now is not just a out of the, just a rare phenomenon of just, how does this happen? No, look at this purchasing power of the Federal Reserve note, what I got here. So since 1913, every single administration, there's been 19 different presidents that has gotten us to this point here where there's very little purchasing power available in a single unit of currency. And so the desire to keep this system going is all subject to the world still believing that this debt instrument has something of value that they want to continue to receive in exchange for real goods and services. So, like I said before, no matter who's in office, the phenomenon or the monetary, whatever we want to call it when we look back in the history books, has already been set. Now, the scramble that they're trying to prepare for is the rebooting of the system when we're no longer using solely just the paper and the commercial bank ledger version of a dollar. The Federal Reserve last hoorah for the system will be the ultimate control of the system when they themselves are the one and only issuer of the currency in a new form, i.e. that central bank digital currency, which will come regardless of who's in office after November or after 2025. So because there's nowhere else to go with this current model that has been used since 1913. So we're witnessing the end game of a monetary experiment that was already failing, and it's just now we're getting different narratives and getting different spins on how it might come to an end. But as I said before, there's no financial future in the Federal Reserve liability. So long as you know that, you're taking precautionary measures to do the best you can to secure as much real world resources as you can, and letting everything else fall where they may. It's nothing really to follow here based upon what figures we get or what narratives we get from the mainstream media, just because they have a job, and that's to keep confidence in the system, because the whole goal all along was to keep your currency in the system through some product, whether it be an annuity or some type of life insurance policy or stocks or bonds, and all those products that you've been lured to investing in. Those are being brought to question. What else we got here? Okay, keep it moving. Let's get into a little Q&A real quick. James says, what is stopping the Fed to offer the government a zero interest rate deal? What is stopping the Fed zero interest rate deal? I'm sure they can probably concoct some type of experiment like that. I don't know. I mean, I don't think that's something that the investment world would accept, because if the Fed and Treasury work directly together, basically just bypassing the open market, which they pretty much have already done, then at that point the rest of the world will literally decide to just dump U.S. liabilities. Like, who in the world would buy a bond? And all the bonds, the trillions of bonds that's out there, will literally just be dumped, literally, which ultimately saying the currency would literally be worthless just that fast if that was to come to fruition. So that's why they have to go through some processes to where ideally you want the market in foreign countries to be, to want your liabilities as assets. But we're witnessing to a world where U.S. Treasuries and government bonds, are they really assets, and to who? Just because they pay a little yield, 4, 5, 6%, those are only like useful for financial products that like hedge funds and pension funds, retirement portfolios they are forced to buy those things. But even though even they know they're being shortchanged because the real rate of inflation is a lot higher. So they're already in real terms losing. So yeah. Tom says, my opinion, 0% student loans are the only fair way I can see. Uh student loans. So yeah, like here's the thing, like what value are you really getting from a student loan in this current environment where cost of education is already overpriced and it no longer guarantees anything like to get a quality job of any kind, especially here living in the manufacturing sector. I remember, specifically, you have to have a master's damn near to be able to actually be considered for, the higher engineer, the software developer type jobs. Whereas in just a regular bachelor's is like, what does that do? That's the new diploma. So taking on a student loan of itself is risky. So yeah, and on top of that, speaking of which, let me I forgot one article I wanted to bring to your attention. Let me see here. Looks like Biden is back at it again. Give me a second here. Looks like Biden is back at it again. Biden announces new plans to provide student debt relief for 30 million Americans. So if they can issue the debt, which is an asset to them because of future expectations of tax income and stuff like that off of your labor, this to me signals that the great society that was put forth by Lyndon B. Johnson in the 60s that led to plans such as this, the whole idea of giving people a way of improving their lives through higher education, that model was failing because it no longer pays to go into debt to get an education and something that you're no longer guaranteed to make a viable living for yourself having. So this right here, the fact that the government is willing to cancel debt lets us know that there's no true long-term sustainable value in having a having higher education in a field that is being priced out slash slowly but surely faded out due to technology. So imagine this, by the end of next year. So okay, not side note, even Elon Musk, who's being touted as like the forefront of he's the Einstein of our time, yada yada yada, whatever. Even he agrees, based upon the fact that he probably knows some things that we don't know yet. But he's saying that by the end of this year, let me share this with you real quick. And these are things that should really make people rethink the idea of furthering their education the conventional way. Is because we are. Let me share this with you real quick here. I'm ranting a little bit, but trying to get everything out. So here we have, this is just something that Elon Musk says. Elon Musk predicts AI will overtake human intelligence next year. So think about that. Human intelligence, according to all these algorithms and large language models being put together, if AI overtakes human intelligence, that automatically leads to a disruption in the current job paradigm because employers will automatically sign up and plug into whatever services or products are brought into existence from the technology space, therefore alleviating the need for human labor, especially paper pushers or people behind a desk calculating stuff, because you can get greater output in a short amount of time for cheaper without having to promise any type of benefits, sick day, or things like that. So if this statement is true that he foresees human intelligence being taken over by next year, it's good to say that at the end of this year, heading to next year, after the job apocalypse is already taking place now, the entire labor landscape will be turned upside down, inside out, further disincentivizing people to want to go to college to get an education for something that is not even going to be in demand. And that's the bad news. But the good news is from that will be the advent of a lot of new industries and things of that nature that people can get be a part of. But we're in uncharted territories on every front. Socially, our country's been invaded. We're going to have more foreigners in this country than will be natural born citizens, which is going to be problematic. Politically, the left-right paradigm is ran its course. Everybody know that no matter who wins, we lose, the people. Monetarily speaking, the monetary structure in reference to the reserve currency, the dollar, is no longer the case. I don't think the dollar is the world reserve currency because there's alternatives, and other nations have already expanded their reserve structures by including gold first and foremost, and local currencies that they do business with directly. So that's the third thing. And then fourth, we got all these signs and wonders, man. It's good to say that we're closer to the Lord's return than they were 100 years ago. So it could be another 10, 20, who knows, but everything has turned out to be very interesting to say the least, man. But anyway, you can't say you didn't know, because your boy Mike put you on game. And as always, man, like, despite all the obvious, this is still the greatest point in time in human history, because we have a way to communicate back and forth, to educate each other, to lift each other up, to build each other up, and to further encourage one another, on the importance of, literally, like my three models. You got the natural, the practical, and the spiritual. Those are the three most important, spectrums of life. The natural is the things we deal with day-to-day basis. The practical is what we do once we have information on how to navigate in this realm. And then spiritual is what encompasses it all. Like, everything is a spiritual experience at the end of the day. And that's where, for me, faith has been more important than ever. And for those who may have came in late, I started off by talking about, what's guaranteed. And so according to scripture here, we have a lot of promises given to us by God. And this is something that really stood out to me today. It says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. To me, I look at that as a promise from the creator of the universe himself to me. Because I believe in that, I stick to that, I hold to that, and I expect that. And as a result, just through sheer expectation, my focus is on those things. Therefore, whatever you focus on expands in the natural. And so I anticipate God doing some marvelous things in my life and for my family amongst all the chaos around me. So with that being the case, like, it's going to be a good day, people. It's going to be a good day. But anyway, with that being the case, that's all she wrote. Hope everyone has a great day. Be blessed, be safe. Go out and just take the day by grab the bull by the horn and make it a great day. Be good, people. Peace.